Lioness has spent 2 seasons building a very specific promise to its audience, that Joe McNamara can hold the line between the woman who runs Black Ops missions and the woman who tucks her daughters into bed at night. Episode 2, No Sorrow Like the Survivor, is the hour where that promise finally breaks. Not with an explosion. With a blood-soaked pool of nothing and a family that will never feel safe in their own home again. Let's go through everything. What actually happened to Joe after last week's kidnapping cliffhanger. Why her own team is more worried about what she might say than whether she survives. The theory she develops about the man they thought was Yurimov. What this means for Neil and the girls going forward. And why this episode proves Taylor Sheridan doesn't need a single gunfight to make you hold your breath for an hour straight. The premiere ended with Joe kidnapped, and episode 2 opens by treating that fact almost like a mission statement rather than a plot twist to be resolved quickly. We watch her stripped, searched, and relocated by her captors in a sequence that is genuinely difficult to sit through. When they can't get information out of her any other way, they take a knife to the big toe of her left foot and cut out the tracking locator embedded there. TV Fanatic described watching that moment as enough to make you physically wince, and I completely agree. The way Joe surrenders that single piece of information feels less like defeat and more like a calculated trade, buying herself time by giving up the one thing that costs her the least. By the time her team actually arrives to search for her, she is long gone. All that's left is the extracted tracker and a pool of blood on the floor. And here's what I think is the most unsettling structural choice this episode makes. Kaitlyn and Byron are worried about Joe, obviously. But the episode is honest about the fact that their bigger fear isn't losing her. It's what she might reveal under torture. Joe is a senior CIA official. She knows things. And watching 2 people who genuinely care about her have to hold that second, colder fear right alongside their concern for her safety is exactly the kind of morally uncomfortable territory this show has built its entire identity on. It's a small scene, but it says everything about the world Joe actually lives in. One where even the people who love her most have to calculate her value in terms of national security before they can fully feel their fear for her as a person. This episode also brings in Secretary of State Edwin Mullins for the first time this season, and it starts widening out a conspiracy that began forming in the premiere around a so-called honeypot double agent. Joe starts putting together a theory that genuinely reframes everything we thought we understood about last week's operation. That the man everyone believed was Yurimov might not have been Yurimov at all. That the entire mission might have been engineered from the start for one purpose only, flushing Joe out into the open and exposing her identity. And it worked. I think what makes this theory land so hard is that it doesn't just implicate an enemy operation from the outside. It implicates the entire premise of the mission Joe walked into believing she had the upper hand on. If she's right, she wasn't the hunter in that operation at all. She was the target the whole time, and nobody on her own side saw it coming until it was already too late to stop. The fallout from that theory is where the episode's real weight lives. Joe's children have been relocated for their safety, watched over by Josephina. Neil, her husband, is described as being beside himself trying to process this new reality, a man who signed up for a marriage, not a witness protection situation, suddenly forced to reckon with exactly how much danger has been sitting quietly in his own house for years without his full knowledge. And Jo herself is left simply weeping over the realization that her work has now put everyone she loves directly in harm's way. I think this is where No Sorrow Like the Survivor earns its title completely. Surviving the actual kidnapping was never going to be the hard part. Living with what it exposed is. There's a genuinely tender counterweight buried in all of this too. Jo's relationship with Josefina gives the episode a rare moment of real humanity amid all the tension, and it reinforces something this show keeps circling back to across 3 seasons now. Even the most elite operators in the world are still, underneath everything, just desperately searching for something that resembles a normal life. That relationship works precisely because it asks nothing operational of Jo. Josefina isn't there to extract information or manage a crisis. She's just there, steady in a house that's suddenly full of fear, and that steadiness is worth more to this episode emotionally than any of the tactical scenes surrounding it. The CIA's working theory initially frames the whole attack as retaliation for the earlier Ukraine operation and the capture of a Russian asset known as the Beacon. But Jo isn't convinced it's that simple, and her suspicion that this goes deeper, tied directly to her contact with Honeypot and the unanswered questions around Yurimov, is confirmed by one genuinely chilling detail. The Russian operatives behind this didn't just know who Jo was. They knew her home address. This was never just professional retaliation. It was personal, targeted, and deliberately aimed at the one wall Jo has spent her entire career trying to keep standing. What I think makes this episode work so well is exactly what one review put it as. It uses a dual tumulus structure to show how one single miscalculation in the field can trigger a chain reaction that permanently reshapes an entire family. And the episode proves something important about where season 3 is heading creatively. It's not interested in simply repeating the recruitment-driven Lioness stories of earlier seasons. Sheridan is pushing this further into genuine international espionage, political maneuvering, and the real psychological cost of a life spent doing intelligence work. The action is still there when it needs to be. But this episode proves the show doesn't need bullets flying to make your chest tight for a full hour. Some of the tensest minutes in this hour happen entirely in rooms with no weapons drawn at all, just people quietly calculating how much danger they're actually in, watching every word before it leaves their mouth. Because in this world, the wrong sentence can cost someone their life just as easily as the wrong bullet can. By the end, No Sorrow Like the Survivor leaves you sitting, not with an explosion, but with the emotional wreckage one leaves behind. And there are still real questions hanging over everything. Exactly how Jo's identity got exposed in the first place. What Russia is actually building toward with all of this, and whether whoever orchestrated this is finished making moves or has only just begun. Special Ops Lioness airs new episodes every Sunday on Paramount+, building toward its season finale on September 20, 2026. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Jo's theory about Yurimov is right? That this was designed to expose her all along? And now that Russia knows exactly where she lives, do you think her family can ever actually go back to a normal life? Because after this episode, I honestly don't think that wall Jo's been protecting for 3 seasons is ever going back up the same way again.